Emergency podcast, guys. Yuri Perez has been optioned to the minor leagues, heading to Double-A Pensacola. Sean Reynolds, the corresponding move. Tons to get into. This is Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This, of course, is your daily Marlins podcast. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up on Twitter, of course, guys, at Miami Marlins _UK for listening to the pod. Firstly, welcome. Secondly, hit subscribe. Third, this, of course, is your team every day. And thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. It's an emergency pod. By the way, there is a YouTube channel. Strongly recommend you head over there. Hit subscribe there. Also, you'll see the graphics. You will see it is in bold. It is in capitals. Eury Perez options. Big news coming out pre-game before this Phillies series gets rolling. What is a huge series for the Marlins and the Phillies. This news drops. So we're going to dig into all of the reaction, all of my immediate reaction, which, it's been about 15 minutes. So I've managed to walk around the house a couple of times and think about this as best as I can. We're hearing that Johnny Cueto is expected to rejoin the club after the All-Star break. So starting to do some sums around that one and working out, is Johnny Cueto going to take Eury Perez's spot in the rotation? How are they feeling about that? Or is Johnny Cueto perhaps going to move into the bullpen? A lot of thoughts around this move. It's a tough move. So we're going to dig into that. Plus, like I said, a look ahead to this Phillies series. This Phillies series is probably the biggest series between the Marlins and Phillies since 2020. Do you remember back in 2020 when there was a seven-game series effectively between the Marlins and Phillies? They played 7 games on the spin, and at the time, both clubs were kind of hunting down the wild card spots. Huge series. So it's good to remember those times where the Marlins came out on top for sure, but equally the Phillies are coming in scorching hot. They are the hottest team in baseball, some would say right now. If not the hottest, top 3. The Marlins faced the Bravos recently. We saw what happened there. So it's going to be a tough ask for the Marlins in this series, no doubt. Before we do that, this episode is sponsored by Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price. Guaranteed. Hey, and you guys might need to be using Gametime over this weekend, because boy oh boy, the Phillies and Marlins series, it's a stunner. I'm really intrigued to see how many fans there are there, but I'm expecting it to be the biggest turnout perhaps of the year. It could be of the year. It's going to be right up there, I'd imagine, because both these teams are fun. They are in the hunt, no doubt. And for the Marlins team itself, they deserve for guys to show out. They have put up a stellar first half. They're sitting here at 51-38. And Yuri Perez pitched yesterday evening. The Marlins couldn't get the 4-game sweep, unfortunately. It was a tough one for the Fish. They couldn't quite just find the breakthrough. They got a couple of runners on. There was guys on second base with no outs a few times. Bases were juiced. I thought Jesus Sanchez, nearly had the salami. It was nearly salami season at 1 a.m. in the UK. Didn't quite get there. The Marlins couldn't quite get it done. And then Nolan Arenado with the home run against Eury Perez, his only blemish on the day. And, in the end, they scratched a couple of extra runs across, 3-0 for the Cards. It was one of those games. The Marlins just couldn't quite get those runs on the board to give themselves, let the bullpen do its thing. Overall, Yuri Perez finishes with 6 innings. Just 3 hits, one of them a home run, 2 walks and 7 Ks. He ends his first stint with the big league club with a 2.36 ERA. It's been sparkling stuff from Eury Perez. Then we get the news today. Eury Perez optioned. Let's start with the timing of this, because I think that's interesting. We're obviously right up to the All-Star break. 3 games left to go. So the timing is the right timing, because Eury Perez won't be pitching in this series. He just pitched yesterday. We wouldn't have seen Yuri Perez in this series. So from that perspective, this makes a ton of sense. And it's the right timing. They effectively then add, switch or swap out. That was a combination of the two. You swap out a starter that's not going to throw in this series, and you bring up a reliever, and that reliever being Sean Reynolds, 6'8" Sean Reynolds. So they replace size with size, no doubt. So Sean Reynolds is up, another arm for the bullpen. The bullpen, as we've talked about it on yesterday's show. They've been, laboring a touch. Andrew Nardi to the IL to give him a break. They've just had to throw a lot of innings in this first half. There's been so many close games, and the Marlins have been able to win the most of those close games. But overall, it's taxing on the pen. So this is the right move. If, because Yuri's not going to pitch in this series, get Reynolds up there. And, he adds a bit of, an extra arm into the bullpen. What's Reynolds been doing this year? We obviously saw him a bit in spring. He's a big, big dude, of course. He's thrown in total 40 innings worth of work. So, he's only out of the bullpen. So you've had 40 innings worth of work. Overall ERA is across the majority of innings at AA. Some more recent innings, I guess, at AAA. But he's combined for what's his ERA? 2.66 ERA. So it's been impressive. 2-1, 2.66 ERA. Can't really, you can't really complain. He's been pitching well. Will he get his chance? I think he will in this series at some point. There's a good chance he will anyway. So Sean Reynolds up, but really the meat and potatoes of this episode is Eury Perez and the fact that he has been optioned. So here's the next layer of this now. The Marlins have been struggling to work out how to manage Eury Perez's innings in the best possible way. They've been struggling for some time. We're hearing rumors earlier on that it was likely that when Trevor Rogers came back, that's a good few weeks ago now, we were talking about this. When Trevor's back, it's going to be Eury Perez that's going to go down. That's going to be the corresponding move. The Marlins effectively looking to limit his innings, protect his arm, and, not put a huge workload on that arm and manage him properly. So the Marlins have a duty to Eury Perez to manage him, and they are doing that. That's very painful for us as fans because we want to see our best arms in the rotation to give our team the best opportunity of winning. However, the Marlins have to manage Eury Perez. We have all spoken about this now for weeks, and that makes sense. He's only got a certain amount of bullets. When the bullets are out, then so is Eury Perez. So the question for the fish is, when do you use those bullets? That's what it comes down to. When are they going to use these bullets? What we've seen thus far has been extremely, extremely impressive. But if he keeps going at this pace, the bullets will run out sometime in August, let's say. The Marlins will still be in the hunt at that point, likely. But should they make the postseason, no Eury Perez availability. So there's an element here where they are looking to protect the arm. There's also an element where they're looking to give themselves the best chance of winning later in the year. There's equally the risk-reward situation where they are subtracting Eury Perez from the rotation for however long it may be, and thus you then need to fill that spot. And right now, it looks like that spot could be filled with Johnny Cueto. So a lot of this decision will come down to Johnny Cueto and his effectiveness, or even whether the Marlins are comfortable letting Johnny Cueto go back out there as a starter, considering what we've seen in his rehab assignment. And it's been a long rehab assignment for Johnny Cueto. And I think that's been on purpose. That's been just driven by the fact that Eury Perez has been so good. And equally, the results from Cueto in this rehab stint have just been so poor. So what are they going to do? How are they going to handle it? I believe the question was asked to Kim around what's the plan with Cueto. The plan is he will report to the big league club after the All-Star break. He is making a final rehab assignment across this weekend. But the role is not yet determined. So there's no specific indication that he will coming back into the rotation. But you would assume that would be the role he would play, considering his his contract, his history, what he's been doing in his rehabs, it would be pretty wild if they brought him up and then just dumped him in the bullpen. And then the question would be is, who then takes Eury Perez's spot? I don't think there is any other major candidates at this point, but we'll see. We'll see. The Marlins could get creative. There's a few guys that have been, doing some stuff at AAA. We'll wait to see on that one. Before we do that, guys, it's time to let you know about our good friends over at Gametime. Yes, sir. Like I said, you guys may be leaning heavily into Gametime across this weekend. This Marlins Phillies series could be a sellout. Who knows? But if you are thinking about getting last-minute tickets, then Gametime is absolutely the place to be for you guys. No doubt. They cover everything. We've already talked about it many times. They cover absolutely everything from sports, music, comedy, and theater. They've got it all. And they've got last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you will have. You can forget planning months in advance. You can just make the call. Hey, I want to go to Lone Depot this weekend, and I want to go and watch the Marlins and Phillies. And you can make that happen because they've got deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Whatever more there is. Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. You can't say fairer than that. So what do you got to do? Pretty simple. You download the Gametime app, you create an account, and you use the code LOCKEDONMLB. It's all one word, and it's all in caps for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay. So let's continue this conversation around Eury Perez and the plan that he heads down to AA Pensacola. And the question will be, is what does he actually do at AA and for how long? Those are the two questions. What's he going to be doing? Is he actually going to be pitching in games? Or is this send him back to Pensacola because that was the club that he was with earlier in the year, familiarity, etc., etc. But actually it ends up just being like more kind of bullpens and he's still throwing, but not throwing in games. That makes a ton of sense. Again, this is all tricky for the Marlins, but as we've said, the innings are the problem. So for me as a fan, I would find it puzzling if he is sent down to AA Pensacola to throw in-game innings. That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense to do that. I don't think that's what will be happening. It can't be because it doesn't make any sense. If this is to protect innings, then he goes back and he's just keeping his arm active, doing what he's doing, working on what he's working, keeping sharp, let's say, until the Marlins think that the time is right to recall Eury Perez. And who knows how quick that will be? Who knows how quickly they will need him? Because this is all of the information we're getting now. He's been optioned because he's not going to pitch before the All-Star game right now. And they needed an arm in the bullpen. Could this be a short stint? And actually, he's back up, relatively quickly after the All-Star break. I think a lot of it pertains to Johnny Cueto, as I've already mentioned. Like, they don't have any other options at this point. Trevor's looking not good. Eddie's starting to throw, but needs some time to build way back up. Like, they're gonna need another starter instead of Eury Perez for a good couple of weeks after the All-Star break, I think. And that starter at the moment looks to be Johnny Cueto, which, yeah, that's what he's been paid to do. But the results seem to say that he won't. So for me, I would be stunned if Eury Perez is throwing innings. The interesting bit here is how quickly he's up. And as well, if things go wrong, the Marlins are playing the long game here in the long game in the season, not for years and years. I want to talk about that as well in terms of like cost controlling, maybe extra years of control for Eury Perez. But let's not talk about that for 1 second. We'll come to that. But the Marlins are thinking about, controlling Yuri Perez, for later down the stint. If things go wrong, how quickly, how bullish are they going to be in getting someone back up? Or equally, how bullish does Kim need to be to go and find an extra arm right now? And that may be the corresponding move, is that Kim gets out there and they make a deal for a starter somewhere and they get I think they need another arm anyway, to be honest with you. I think they do. And I don't think they can bank on Cueto. So it wouldn't shock me if, while the All-Star break's happening, the Marlins drop a deal. Kim makes a deal, gets an arm in that they think they can bank on. And let's not forget, you got Brian Hoeing in the rotation right now too. So you've got the top three that we're going to see this series: Sandy, Luzardo, and Brax. Not in that order, but those three guys have been well, the two lefties have been really good. Sandy's obviously looks like he's turned a corner, which is great. It's going to be a big test for Sandy. I'm really excited. He had some struggles last year against the Phillies more than anyone, I would say. So big test for Sandy. Overall, with this Eury Perez news, it's been expected. We've heard this and we've been clear on it for a long time now. They need to control him in a way that protects him first and foremost, but equally gives the Marlins an opportunity to use some of those innings later down the line, potentially in the run-in for the regular season and then into the postseason. Makes sense. The challenge the Marlins face is they don't have a ton of other options at this point, and that's why this decision has been delayed for multiple weeks. It's been delayed because Trevor's down, Eddie's down, Cueto's Cueto, and thus there's just been no one to come up. Do the Marlins trade for someone? I think it's possible. I actually think it's likely that they swing a deal over this All-Star period for another arm. I think it is. I think it's a chance. Good chance, actually. So we'll see. What I don't want to see is Yuri Perez throwing tons of innings at AA. For me, that just doesn't make sense. And if that is the case, and the other thing here to call out is, by him being optioned, he moves away from his major league salary back down to minor league money for this period. Chris Towers was just talking about it on Twitter, and I thought it was an interesting point that they could have IL'd Yuri Perez. They could have IL'd him and kept paying him his major league salary. They decided not to. So not only is he coming away from the big league club, and he's been a big part of that, obviously. He's also taken a massive pay cut for this period, so he's hoping it's not going to be too short. And he's been a big part of this clubhouse too. Whenever I've seen the Marlins getting these, late wins, late rallies, Yuri Perez is dancing, and he's dancing in the dugout. He's absolutely going crazy. He's literally like, he's acting like he's 20. He's acting like he's 12, to be honest with you. And I've got no problem with that. Love to see it. Love to see the youthful exuberance from Yuri Perez. But the Marlins decide not to IL him. He goes down to AA, and they, save a bit of dough on that one, let's say. And it is what it is. Is this service time manipulation? It's the other question. Are the Marlins looking to extend an additional year of control at this point? I don't believe that is the motivating factor. So I could understand why it could be seen that way, but I don't believe that is the driving factor at this point. And, we'll wait to see how things play out. We'll wait to see how short or long this stint may be at AA. But I don't believe this is service time manipulation. I believe this is just, duty of care for Eury Perez to manage his innings. And the question is, would you have preferred Eury Perez to have just kept pitching throughout and then be shut down in August? Or you hold him back a bit for the postseason run, if indeed there is one? And I think that's been the dilemma. That's been my dilemma. Me and Sean Barrett on this pod have spoken about that. For me, I probably would have just kept him rolling. And then in the postseason, let's think to the postseason. Let's say everyone is back and healthy, and you've effectively got Sandy, who'd be your game 1 starter, Luzardo, your game 2 starter. Then, Braxy would still be doing his thing. In the wild card, it's only a 3-game series anyway. Then it's a 5-gamer. So you only need a 3-man rotation in those two. It's only if you advance later into the DS, the CS. Actually, not even the DS. Is the DS 5 games? I completely forgot what the new format is. But the wildcard series is definitely 3 games. But is it a 5-game in the DS? Maybe. And then 7 games after that. And then 7 in the World Series. And at that point, clearly you need, probably a 4-man rotation. The Marlins have got enough arms, though. They got enough arms at this point to go into a postseason series with Sandy, Luzardo, Brax, one of that's healthy, Edward Cabrera or Trevor Rogers. to be honest with you. I feel pretty comfortable. I know Eury Perez has pitched well thus far, and he's looked great. But there's been times when Eddie Cabrera's looked great. There's been times when Trevor Rogers has looked great. The problem is none of those two guys are available right now, and Cueto is. This is the point. This is what I think will frustrate me, is if the Marlins try to kind of navigate through this, let's say, month. Let's say they go through August, and they try to navigate every fifth day with Cueto or a trade, someone they've traded for, or someone else internally, and they start losing those games pretty regularly and consistently. Next thing is, yes, you may have a fresh Eury Perez for the run-in or the postseason, but it's going to be competitive. The Phils are surging. The Mets are surging. The Dodgers are doing okay. Other teams are going to be, they're going to have their time. The Marlins have got a tough schedule. Like, they can't just rest on the fact that they are making the postseason. And that is the fine balance of this whole situation, that if they, making this move, they expose themselves to more L's than dubs, in my opinion, particularly if Cueto's going off and starting, particularly if it's like what we've seen at AAA during the rehab assignment. That's the real tricky question for me. And it's one that, as a fan, I will find hard to swallow. Like, the pressure on Johnny Cueto now, if he comes into the rotation, is immense, because what we've seen thus far has been turgid. The Marlins are bang live, and they have replaced Yuri Perez, who's been the best pitcher in the NL since he's come up. He's had the best start to a pitching career, since 1901 or something crazy. And you're going to replace him with Johnny Cueto. The pressure is on that boy right now. He needs to show up and deliver if indeed he is going out into the rotation. Huge pressure on Cueto. This clubhouse and this team needs to keep the momentum rolling. It really does. Really, really does. The Phillies are in town. I've barely had time to speak about the Phillies because there's just so much that goes into this Yuri Perez decision. And that's why I know it's been tough for the Marlins. But 3-game series, guys, and I've got to be honest with you, this is the biggest series of the season thus far. The Phillies are absolutely surging, and the Marlins have been playing some good ball. They're only 6-4 in the last 10, the Marlins. Obviously, they got that Braves series sprinkled in there. The Phils are 8-2. They've won their last 3. That was 3 games in Tampa. They've gone into Tampa and swept the Rays. So the Phils are hot, guys. I have to call out, though, I haven't been watching a lot of the Rays. I feel like I saw a ton of pitching injuries for those guys. So I'm not certain what kind of state the Rays are in at this point. It may just be like the Rays were so hot at the start, and then they've kind of like come back to earth with a few injuries. Not 100% on that, but no doubting the Phils are hot, and this is going to be tough. Going in game 1, and this is where it's going to be, critical. We're going to see Sandy Alcantara against Zach Wheeler. Wheeler's 7-4 with a 4.03 ERA. Sandy's 3-7 with a 4.93 ERA. But Sandy, in the last start and a bit, has been back, baby. He's been smiling. He's been looking fresh. He's been looking Cy Young fresh. So the Marlins need Sandy here. They really do. This is the time. I mentioned it earlier, like a few weeks back. He struggled and the teams carried him. But it's time for Sandy Alcantara to step up in a big, big spot. The Phils don't like coming to Lone Depot. They don't. They've got a terrible record in Lone Depot. That's without any numbers in front of me, but that's the feeling I have. The last time we had that big series, the 7-gamer, the Marlins won it 5-2, which effectively sealed the Marlins postseason, in my opinion, that year. So I know a postseason can't be decided, and a wildcard spot can't be decided on the 7th, 8th, and 9th of July. But from a wildcard perspective right now, the Marlins hold the WC1 spot. The Phils are in the WC3. They're 2.5 games back of the Marlins. So they're really surging. You've then got the Giants outside looking in. They've been hot. They've then kind of cooled a touch recently. The Brewers are also on 47 wins, so they're in the mix. Then there's quite a drop then, 5.5 games to the Mets, the Padres. And those teams, I think, will be dangerous. They will be dangerous because, there's so much talent. There's so much talent in the Mets, the Padres, that they're going to piece things together and go on a streak. So it's for the Marlins here to keep playing good ball. They've played good ball all year long. They've played great ball at home. They've got the perfect 3 going versus what is left in the rotation in Sandy, in Brax, and in Jesus Luzardo. They've got the perfect 3 going. Equally so of the Phils. Zach Wheeler, in game 1, not UK friendly. Ranger Suarez in game 2. And then game 3, Aaron Nola against Luzardo, UK friendly, of course, on a Sunday. Huge series, guys. 2 lefties going for the Marlins. I wanted to look into some of the numbers, the offensive numbers for the Phils, and see, who's hot, who's not against lefties. I remember doing the same against the Guardians earlier in the season. So when I think about the Phils, I think about Kyle Schwarber and the Bombs. What can he do? He's obviously, big power hitter. He hits lefties pretty well, no doubt. Bryce Harper, you then think about Bryce. What's Bryce doing? Not being good against lefties. But you then look at Nick Castellanos, who's having a huge bounce back year. He's crushing lefties. You then look at JT Realmuto. What's he doing? He's crushing lefties. What about Alec Boehm? He's crushing lefties. Game 1 is absolutely critical for the Marlins. It's likely to be low scoring, but it's so critical because I think the Marlins are going to be really up against it in game 2 and 3. That Phillies order, that Phillies lineup has been scorching hot against lefties. There's going to be a high propensity for damage there to be done by the Phils, while they've got some of their stud guys going in Ranger Suarez and Aaron Nola to round it off. If the Marlins take this series, that would be a huge, huge success. They would end it if they do take 2 at 53 and 39. 53 and 39, guys. 14 games over 500 at the All-Star break if they were to win this series 2-1. I mean, that's what we're aiming for here. It's perfectly reasonable. Even if the Marlins drop all 3, it's still been an incredible start. But the Marlins right now are in a battle with the Phils for the wild card. They will be in a battle with them all year for the wild card spot. So these feel like key series. They are key series. And the last time they played a key series against the Phils, a meaningful series in 2020, when there was playoff ramifications on the line for both clubs, the Marlins performed well. With that being said, thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Emergency pod, immediate reaction to the news that Eury Perez is optioned. I understand the timing. I understand the rationale. I'm intrigued to see how long this period is. Equally, can Johnny Cueto step up and deliver any meaningful innings for the Marlins? And can the Marlins overcome the Phillies and win this series to head into the All-Star break 14 games or more over 500? Thanks for listening, guys, and I'll be back on Monday unless any major news drops, as you know. I'll see you then.